In a small Nigerian town where hope often drowned in struggle, there lived a girl named Grace. She was not the richest, nor the most connected, but there was something in her spirit that refused to bow. While others waited for chances, Grace created hers. Her hands bore the roughness of work. Her eyes held the fire of ambition. In her school, her teachers whispered behind her back, not in judgment, but in awe. "That girl will go far," they said. Yet her torn uniform and mended shoes told a different story. After secondary school, while others waited for a miracle, Grace picked up a comb and a pair of scissors. With a borrowed chair under a mango tree, she became the town's most sought-after hairstylist. People came not just for the perfect braids, but for the gentle laughter and warm stories she shared. Her house was small, noisy, and filled with love. Her mother sold peppers in the market. Her father, stern and skeptical, worked as a mechanic. They didn't have much, but they had each other. One blazing afternoon, while Grace braided the hair of a stylish woman named Madame Helen, something shifted. Madame Helen, known for her wealth and poise, had visited Grace several times, but today felt different. Grace worked with the focus of an artist. When she finished, Madame Helen looked at herself in the hand mirror, nodded slowly, and then turned to Grace. "You're special," she said. "Have you ever considered working abroad?" Grace blinked. "Abroad, Ma?" "Yes. I want to sponsor you. A job in a top salon in the United States. You'll earn more than you can ever imagine here." For a second, everything stopped. Grace's hands froze. Her mouth went dry. "Are you serious, Ma?" "I never joke with opportunity," Madame Helen smiled. Grace burst into tears. "Thank you, Ma. God bless you. I would love that." That night, Grace raced home, heart pounding. Her mother broke into a dance, praising God. Her father folded his arms, frowning. "Are you sure she's not a scammer? Or worse?" he asked. "No, Daddy," Grace replied. "She's helped me before. She's real." He grunted, unconvinced. But Grace had already seen the future. Scary, yes, but also full of promise. Paperwork began. Passport photos, forms, approvals. Madame Helen handled it all. Grace had never even seen a passport before. Soon, she was ready. The town buzzed with envy and rumors. Some called her lucky. Others whispered warnings. Madame Helen asked to meet her parents. "They need to know who's taking their daughter across the ocean," she said. At their compound, Grace's mother served her guest malt and rice. Her father, as usual, sat with arms crossed. "I saw how hard-working your daughter was," Madame Helen said. "She's special. I've arranged a good job for her. She'll be safe and she'll thrive." Her father gave a small nod. Not approval, but not refusal either. The day of departure came with 1,000 emotions. Her mother wept and held her close. Her siblings cried too. Her father stayed silent until she climbed into the bus. "Don't forget who you are," he said, his voice low but strong. The plane ride was cold and loud. Grace couldn't sleep. What if she failed? What if her father had been right? But when she landed, the shining skyline of America felt like walking into a dream. A stern but kind woman named Miss Carroll met her at the airport. "Welcome, Grace," she said. "You start work tomorrow. Hope you're ready." "Yes, Ma," Grace replied, trying to steady her voice. The salon was a world of mirrors, lights, and impossible expectations. Grace gave it her all. She smiled, she listened, she learned. She sent money home each month, fixed her mother's stall, paid her siblings' school fees. even helped her father expand his workshop. She lived small, but she gave big. She sacrificed meals, walked in the snow, but never let her family lack. And as years passed, Grace began to dream bigger, not just survival, ownership. She wanted a salon of her own, not for pride, but for legacy. The first time Grace turned the key to her own salon, her hands trembled. The door opened with a soft creak, and the smell of fresh paint welcomed her. It was not large, but it was hers. Mirrors lined the walls, chairs gleamed under warm lights, and her name glowed proudly above the door. Grace Touch. Clients came quickly. Word spread like wildfire. The Nigerian girl with golden fingers, they called her. Her skill, her warmth, her story, everything about her made people want to sit in her chair. But beneath her joy, there was a quiet emptiness. Grace had given her all for others. Now, she wanted someone to choose her, to love her. She joined an online community for Nigerians abroad. That was where she met Leo. Leo was charming, funny, and lived in Lagos. He called himself a businessman and said all the right things. He loved her voice, her dreams, her heart. Grace smiled differently when his name showed up on her phone. Slowly, she began to hope that maybe love had finally found her. They talked every day, sent pictures, voice notes, prayers, and when he said he wanted to build a life with her, Grace believed him. She sent small amounts at first, then more. Leo said he was buying land, then building a house, then furnishing it. Each time he asked, she sent without hesitation. "When you come home," he said, "you'll see everything I built for us." In the middle of all this, Grace received a message that brought tears to her eyes. It was from Ruth, an old classmate. "Grace, I hate to ask. I'm in my final year and can't pay my school fees. You're the only one I can think of." Grace sent the money without blinking, told Ruth to keep the change. Ruth cried in her reply, "You've changed my life. I'll never forget this." Grace smiled, not knowing that this simple act of kindness would one day return like a miracle. Back home, her family's life improved. Her mother now had a shop instead of a stall. Her siblings were doing well in school. Her father even bought a second-hand car. Grace gave and gave, even when she had nothing left for herself, even when her own needs went unmet. But deep inside, a question kept returning. Would they still love her if she had nothing? And then, one day, she decided it was time to find out. 10 years had passed. Grace was no longer the girl who braided under a mango tree. But despite all she had built, a deep ache lived in her chest. She needed answers, real answers. Not through calls or video chats, face to face. She booked her flight to Nigeria and told no one. Not Leo, not her parents, not her friends. This trip wasn't for celebration, it was for truth. The plane touched down with a gentle bump. The air smelled of dust and heat and memories. Grace took a cab straight to the address Leo had given her months ago, the house he claimed they owned together. A white gate stood tall before her. She took a deep breath and knocked. No answer. She pushed the gate. It opened. Leo stepped out of the house, shirtless, looking shocked. "Grace? What are you doing here?" "I wanted to surprise you," she said, forcing a smile. "Is this our house?" Leo's eyes darted. "Wait here. Let me get a hotel for you. You need to rest." "Hotel? Why would I stay in a hotel?" Before he could answer, the front door creaked. A woman stepped out, young, pregnant, barefoot. "Who is she, Leo?" she asked, looking straight at Grace. The silence was heavy. "Who is she, Leo?" Grace asked again. her voice trembling. He stammered, "I can't explain." Grace shook her head. "You lied. You used me. You said you were single. You said this was our home." The woman stepped back, whispering something under her breath. Grace turned and walked away. Her steps were heavy. Her chest burned. Her heart felt like it was breaking in pieces. She checked into a small hotel nearby, threw herself on the bed, cried until the sun disappeared. All she had given, all she had built, for what? But her spirit wasn't done yet. That night, she made a plan. She would test everyone, pretend she was broke, see who loved her without the money, without the name, without the power. She called home the next morning. "Daddy, I'm back in Nigeria. Can you come pick me up?" She stood at the roadside in worn clothes and a faded scarf. No makeup, no jewelry, just her. A rusty car pulled up. Her father stepped out. "Grace?" She nodded. "It's me, Daddy." He opened the door. No smile, no questions, just confusion. At home, her mother rushed out but paused at the sight of her. "My God, what happened?" Inside, Grace told a lie. "I was deported. They accused me of something I didn't do. I lost everything." Her mother wept. Her father paced. "So you didn't bring anything back?" Grace shook her head. "Nothing." The house turned cold. Her siblings whispered. Her father grew distant. Only her mother remained kind. 1 week later, her father sat her down. "You can't stay here doing nothing. We expected more. 1 more week. Then you go." Her lips quivered. "But I bought this house for you." He scoffed. "I built my business too. You're not the only one who struggled." Her brothers called her stingy, ungrateful. On her last day, her father tossed her bag outside. "We didn't ask you to come back." Her mother gave her 300,000 naira and whispered, "If I had power in this house, you'd stay. Please don't hate me." Grace left in silence, her bag heavy, her heart heavier. But destiny had one more twist waiting. At a roadside, a familiar voice called out, "Grace?" She turned. It was Ruth. Grace turned slowly, her heart still aching. "Ruth?" she whispered. Ruth dropped her plastic bag of groceries and rushed over. She hugged Grace tightly, right there on the dusty roadside. Grace didn't hold back. She wept, loud and broken. Ruth held her, rocking her gently like a child. "Come," Ruth said softly. "Come home with me." They walked through narrow streets lined with rusted zinc roofs and clotheslines. Ruth's home was small, old, but clean. Her parents were sitting outside, peeling yams. They looked up as the girls approached. "This is Grace," Ruth said. "She paid my school fees when nobody else could. She's the reason I graduated." Her mother dropped the knife and stood. You're the one we've prayed for? The one who helped our daughter when even family turned away. Come inside, my child. Come in." That night, Grace ate a simple meal of yam and red stew, seated on the floor among strangers who treated her like family. They passed 1 cup of water, shared 1 lantern, but their hearts were full. For the first time since she landed, Grace slept in peace. On a thin mat, beside Ruth, with no luxury, just love. Days turned into weeks. Grace stayed. She helped Ruth at her small salon. They talked, braided, laughed. Grace never said a word about Leo or her lie about being deported. She just lived, slowly healing. One evening, as they walked home from work, Grace turned to Ruth. "You never asked me for anything. Why did you open your door so easily?" Ruth smiled. "Because you did the same for me. And because when someone loves you, it should never come with conditions. Tears filled Grace's eyes. She stopped walking. "You have no idea what that means to me." "I do," Ruth said gently. "You've shown it to others. Now let someone show it to you." That night, Grace lay under the mosquito net and stared at the cracked ceiling. Her heart, once shattered, now pulsed with new strength. She had seen the truth. Her family failed the test. Leo failed, but Ruth passed. And it was time to reward love with love. The next day, Grace asked Ruth and her parents to follow her somewhere. They didn't ask questions, just got into the hired car quietly. They arrived at a quiet estate. The white gate still stood like a statue of her past pain. "This is beautiful," Ruth said. "Why are we here?" Grace handed her a folded paper. "Read it." Ruth opened it. Her eyes widened. "This is a house deed." "It's yours now," Grace said softly. "I won a case. Leo was arrested. I got it back, but I don't want it. I want you to have it." "But why?" "Because you gave me shelter without knowing what I could give you back. Because you reminded me what real love feels like." Ruth dropped to her knees. Her parents began to cry and pray. "I didn't do it for reward," Ruth whispered. "That's why you deserve it," Grace replied. And just like that, Grace found her answer. Not in money, not in applause, but in quiet loyalty. She turned to Ruth, holding her hand. "I want you to come with me to the US. Let's build something together, not as boss and worker, as sisters." Ruth gasped. "You mean it?" "More than anything." As the sun dipped behind them, the house no longer felt like betrayal. It now felt like hope. Grace stood at the airport with Ruth beside her. The same terminal she once passed through as a girl with dreams, she now faced as a woman who had lived those dreams, been broken by them, and built new ones from the ashes. Ruth clutched her small travel bag tightly, eyes wide with wonder and disbelief. Her passport felt like a miracle in her hand. Grace had handled every detail, quietly, firmly, like someone who had done this before. "I still can't believe it," Ruth said, voice trembling. Grace smiled gently. "Believe it. You're going with me." As they walked towards the boarding gate, people moved past them in every direction, some rushing, some hugging goodbye. But Grace felt a strange calm inside, a kind of peace she had not known in years. The plane took off into the sky. Grace leaned back in her seat and stared out the window as Nigeria slowly disappeared beneath the clouds. This time, she wasn't leaving because she had something to prove. She was going back to build, not alone, but with someone who had held her when everything else had fallen. Back in the United States, Grace moved fast. Her salon expanded. She opened a second branch, then a third. Ruth learned quickly. She worked like someone with something to protect. Not just a job, but a purpose. One day, Grace brought Ruth to a new location. The space was still empty, bare walls, scattered tools. Grace handed Ruth a ring of keys. "This one's yours," she said. Ruth stared at her. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're no longer helping me. You're leading. You're the co-owner. This one will carry both our names." Ruth tried to speak, but her voice broke. She hugged Grace and cried. They named it G.R. Beauty. On the wall beneath the sign, they painted the words, "Built on Grace, strengthened by Ruth." Clients came in curious, left amazed. Word spread again, just like before. But this time, Grace wasn't alone. Every braid, every style, every conversation felt like healing. At night, they sat on Grace's balcony, sipping tea, telling stories about the village, about the days when all they had was a mat and shared hope. Sometimes Ruth would say, "If anyone told me this would be my life," and Grace would finish, "You would have laughed." They both laughed then, long and free. And so, the girl who once braided hair under a mango tree didn't just survive. She transformed. She lifted others. She didn't return home with riches. She returned with truth. And from truth, she built everything again. Not just for herself, but for someone else. And that made all the difference.